Hello everyone, my name is Chloé. I'm happy to be there. I've been a designer for the past 5 years in a consulting firm. Before that, I worked for IoT and web agencies. So my company is called Suricats Consulting, and I'm fortunate in this company to have strategic responsibilities through the role of entrepreneur manager. And it's quite unusual for a designer to be part of the business, human, and development management bodies that are linked to the company as a whole and not just design division. So in similar way, I'm staff on projects as a consultant designer with mission with pilote responsibilities. I've been practicing this role for over 2 years now, and I like to share my observation with you about the particularity that a designer at this level brings to a project. So, but before that, maybe let us go back to the origin of the topic. What is the designer? You will find here 3 people practicing the same trade. 3 jobs that seem very different and which are filled with preconceived ideas. For example, maybe the first one looks to you as lone artisan, the second a web designer who only talks with marketing or developers, and the last one maybe an extroverted person who covers your wall with colorful papers. Know that even designers have this prejudice about the way they do their job, but yet there are the same type of brand that is capable of doing this task, a brain forged by years of studies, experience, and that has developed through a thought process that is really specific to the profession of designers. Because finally, when you study design, no matter where you are going, you have to know how to draw. You will always have drawing classes. And why that? Because once something is drawn, is it clear to everyone, and it no longer leads to interpretation. So basically, a picture is worth 1,000 words. For me, this is one of the real role of the designer, is mediating all the stakeholders of a project in order to build a common vision, taking into account the needs, the constraints, and knowing how to prioritize them so we create the best possible version of what it could be, the most efficient version, I say. And to do this, you must be able to communicate correctly with each business line. It's necessary to know how to transcribe, translate in the fairest way what each one desires. And for that, you may see it with the presentation of Mark before, but drawing, modeling, scenarios, speeches, speaking exercise are really an integral part of the designer's education to enable them to do this. So the designer has always been at the crossroad of marketing, industry, and commerce to produce something that is attractive, efficient, and accessible. On one project, you can decide to focus more or less on one of these 3 dimensions, but they are always taken into account. However, there is, for me, another essential dimension that is missing. It's that the subject of the designer is the human factor. Just as engineers study technology, the material of the designer, for me, is the human. If the designer comes to solve problem, it seems to me that error is often human. Concretely, what does this mean? This means that any design approach is organized around the perception, also physical and emotional, and the use by an individual of a tool, a service, an object, an architecture, and so on. So in design school, we study ergonomics. How does this object work? What is obvious? What is intuitive, what is the most suitable for a hand. We study sociology, what are the beliefs, the cultural phenomena, ideas of a society and its spheres. And also we study history of art to understand the history of humanity through the expression of their dreams, their emotion, their fights. So for me, this is what a designer is made of. It's a brain that has developed its emotional intelligence, its empathy, and its ability to converge and translate the imagination of the others. According to you, how much does the thinking process of a manager impact the success of a project? And I think it's a whole. And since designers have a systemic and global way of thinking, I think they could be really useful in the project management. So today, I said that with the evolution of the consumer practices, the way we are able to master all the dimensions, all the rules of society has become very essential. It's become more and more complex to achieve a goal. So for example, we should do design fast, but also validating concept as much as possible. We should have to be innovating without risking disruption. We should be constantly updating things, but we can't disrupt habits. We have to provide high quality, but we can make it pay because it's online. We work for sophisticated users, but we will reject the slightest effort. We ask employees to do the web services that could replace them tomorrow. On top of that, we should integrate more technology, but also prevent global warming. Our first solution in this really constrained universe, I think we must be subtle and try to understand the individual. For example, where is the limit of what your customer will find innovative? What usage can change? How do I stimulate intellectually without losing attention? What barrier do I need to lift to gain trust and get the team involved in the project? Getting on board, I think, is essential because there will be crucial choices to make and to defend. Bring on board the entire team is, I believe, the main strength of the designers, since he knows how to address all the threads of the projects, because he understands and knows how to listen to the needs, the desires, the fears of everyone, because he knows how to give substance to a common vision and lead the way. So some designers may lack confidence and sometimes the charisma that would make them good leader, but I really think the basics are here to make them good mission leaders. Maybe let me tell you about the experience that made me aware of the impact of a designer can have on overall project. It was for the past 2 years for me. In 2020, I started working for an insurance group that brings together 3 different brands. They had just launched their giant program of redesigning the information system of their 3 brands to build one and common single target IS. On this occasion, it was necessary to rethink the interface of the customer spaces in order to offer only a common white label solution. So, however, this same experience has to meet the desire of the marketing teams, the need of the lawyers, the software constraints of each brand. So there was 3 brands to listen to, 3 IS environment to take into account, 3 customer spaces to combine. And from the outside, we feel that one of the challenges will be the convergence. Maybe that's why we're defending the importance of a designer to lead this engagement. So again, to meet our constraint, so we had to invent the user experience for the designers. We have to dispatch the user interface into functional journey. We make batches. We have to make section to create a user experience for each journey. We build different tasks.
Well, I can tell a story about design and younger generations, actually. 2 weeks ago, I've been explaining my job in a pupil school for young kids around 13-ish age. It was fun because the questions were very candid. I mean, we're discussing, you can do this, product, blah, 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 and this is a thing, and show great stuff, show products. And the question, how much money you can earn, actually? Can you do also this in TikTok or whatever? It was very down to the ground in terms of questions at that age. It was so funny.
I totally understand because I do some teaching myself. The students were always asking about the money they can win. Yeah. It was really the main subject for them.
So I convert a bunch of 30 kids because I tell, you can win as much as a football player, you know?
Nice.
So I just hired 30 kids. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it was interesting to see how they were thinking about the perception of the word and the job, what means working and this kind of stuff.
So on this mission, I have to do for our insurance company, I manage a team of 7 consultants, UX design, UI, project manager, business consultant. Our goal was to design a new customer space. So as a designer, I have to cut the space into functional batches and build a methodology to deal with each one in collaboration with the project stakeholder. For each course that we made, we go through user research, monitoring, trend studies, survey, design workshop, wireframe, UI, etc. But quickly, in the project emerged a difficulty that slows us down, and it was that the collection of the technical, profession, and legal rules that exists on each software of the brand was really difficult to get. And since we can't stand to be in Flanders, we decided to rebuild the organization. What I'd like to say is that, in fact, instead of doing only user experience, we redesign the mission itself, the organization on the mission itself. And with the help of the product owner and our client, we drew up a working model to collect, instruct, validate as efficiently as possible all the necessary notion that you need to get. We dedicate one person in the team to the role of business manager, and his mission was to capture before, during, and after our sprints the information. We had a team that meets weekly, created the communicate with key contact and sometimes experts, and each subject was formalized in files with a degree of urgency and a state of progress. So thanks to that, the design really accelerate. Accelerating, I can say that it was really necessary because the project schedule was very ambitious. And our design sprint fed development sprints, and we have to push the new customer interface journey by journey. So it took us 1.5 months to process a course of UX, and we had to do 3 courses in 3 months. To meet our constraints, we had to reinvent yourself. And as we can neither change quality in our time, we had the dimension to the projects and parallel sprints. So we did system design to improve the efficiency and the productivity on our machine. And thanks to that, the machine is well tested. So we have efficient delivery system. But okay, yes, it's a beautiful machine, but I work with people, not with gears. While a gear can be under pressure constantly, it's not the case for a human. As I say, we design because we care about people. The difficulty here is to keep the pace without getting tired. How can I offer everyone the right to take vacation or get sick without them feeling guilty and the project being in jeopardy? How do I make my colleague evolve? How do I stimulate their curiosity without putting them in uncomfortable situation? How do I create envy and renewal on industrial machine finally? And I'm going to say it, and it may shock you, but for do this, I'm making sure everyone is replaceable on the project, including me. We cannot replace what everyone brings to a project, but I'm convinced, and this is something I understand during my maternity leave, that being replaceable in one profession is a right, it's a freedom. And because you can leave your role for a moment without feeling guilty this way. Also because this way, when we are able to replace each other within a team, it's allow each one to learn the trade of the others, to progress, to be trained, to be interesting, and to understand better. So in this mission, we try to care and protect the people by making an organization that prevents them from stress and boredom. Our project was a success, and now we can start sharing our experience to the group to help other projects. As a conclusion, I deeply believe that the designer mind should be more welcome, maybe, and encouraged at the top of projects and companies, because I know that a designer abilities to understand human being makes them more than competent managers, and I'm convinced that their systemic thinking and their ability to bring people together can really overcome all problems. So thank you for that.
Sure, thank you very much, Chloé. I have a small question for you from this experience. What will you do differently if you have to make it again? Or is there some things that you would like to change on this?
Yeah, this project took time, and finally I think we built a good organization, but it took time to do it. And on the next mission, I think I start directly by thinking of the organization of the project and just not start to think of this project because there is problem. I will be more anticipative on this way.
Okay, good, thanks.
I have a question for you. In your jobs, do you know some designers who take leads on mission that are not only on design subjects?
I can maybe answer that because I've been testing several models. For the past 3 years, I was lucky enough to have R&D, marketing, and design all together. So we did some experiments because by default, at least in the product design world, the chef de produit, product manager is the chef d'orchestre, basically. That's what happens mainly. We switched a few positions based on the level of innovation and perspective of the product. We would either designate a designer or a researcher in R&D or a product manager to lead the project. Globally, not that I'm preaching for design, but when it's a designer, it works really well, actually. It really does work really well. There is always a but designers need to grow a little bit more their knowledge about business, and that a company is here to be profitable at the end. This is the little part, so they need a little bit of coaching and education around that. But beside that, it works very well because they have a very holistic and systemic point of view of the project. The thing that designers do and other métiers don't do, it's also they keep reframing the project all the time because a frame shouldn't be fixed. When you do at least an innovative project, and every design project should be innovative. I experimented pretty much every model and it works. In some cases, honestly, I feel also better putting like a product manager in charge when it's a very fast-paced project, just an incremental evolution of a project, mainly market-driven. That happens as well because we also need products to milk the cow, basically. It's very case by case, but to answer your question, yes, I did it and it works very well. It proved to be efficient.
And I'm really not saying that we should replace a product or anything. It's just, I think, we could also have designer doing this task. And I'm agree about the business part, because at school, even in our education of designer, money is not really something we like to work on because it constrains everything. So yes, we don't want to listen that. But for example, in experience, I started as a product designer and there was a product owner, and everything that I do was cut down because of the budget of the decision. As it was a small startup, I tried to do project management myself because I want to defend the parts of the design that I do that could be different and make decision. And in this way, I think it could help, because if you have to be cheap, choose what you want to save in your design.
I would like to add something to that. During my career, I changed the models back to not wanting to lead the projects. So in the beginning, I'm hearing, yeah, you need to lead the project. It's like the same discussion about the designers need to have a seat at the table. The reality is, when I look at least in FMCG, so I need to watch out, it's a different game if you're in a different business, but here in our fast-moving consumer goods, I see that the majority of time, designers are starting to spend on project management. Project management is not influence or decision making. So the reality is you need to fight for the fact that every minute the designer spends, he spends on a type of work that brings the maximum value to the organization, and a type of work that no one else can do than just a designer. And project management is something many people can do. Looking at my own team, it's actually of advantage that we are doing not so much project management, it's done by marketing. And we rather focus on influencing, that we really are in the right moments, that we are providing the right strategy. So the influencing skills are actually even more important because they really make the impact, not the fact that you lead the project through even budget management, all of that you can influence by the right strategy. At this moment, at least in the current role, I pull rather into the direction of having a discussion with all designers, which type of work brings the maximum value and how can you increase the amount of time on that type of work.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe because in my experience, we haven't enough designer, or maybe they haven't the right to talk out loud to defending the ideas. I have to go to this way. I think it's interesting too, but yeah, I understand your point of view. When you have the right to do only design, you can be really powerful on what you're defending and presenting.
Yeah, you're right. It's a matter of a maturity level. Where are you? What type of business are you in? And I think gaining first the project lead is gaining a little bit authority and powers over things to influence them. And yet from there onwards, you need to watch out that you're not just diminished to the project management. So you're the facilitator. There's a risk of that you become a facilitator in it. So it's a good trick to enter. And yet when you're in, you need to watch out that your role is the influence and remains the influence.
If I can add one comment on that I was thinking, personally, I work as a design thinker in my company. I work in a telecommunication industry. As a design thinker, what I'm doing with my team is really to try to infuse design knowledge into business people. Like people that never studied design, never saw what a designer work can do and can impact in the business side. So that's an interesting angle also, to have someone in the middle creating a connection, not just to make designer relevant, because I think they are already relevant. They can bring a lot of impact, but it's better infuse people that don't know what design is and connect them, like create a conversation so that this leading role of a designer can happen really in companies. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well, design thinking.
Yeah, you're right.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly, because design thinking finally talks to people who are not designer, because as designer, we think as designer, and I think design thinking is really powerful to get on board people, take them with you in your spirit, in what you want to defend. And I do that either. I try to bring people together around one vision thanks to design thinking methodology a lot.
Interesting.
I don't want it to turn into a debate. I don't fully agree in the designer being caught up in non-value added of being a project leader, because what happens, at least in my experience and what I witnessed, when you have people that were trained to be project manager, you always end up with the same creative process being applied, which is the stage gate process, typical Taylorism, sequential, linear, stage after stage. We all know that's very efficient. It's very easy to watch out people and making sure we stick on deadlines, the typical in French coût qualité délai. So they love that. Then we never try the other models of project process, just pure process. You have like agile, concurrent engineering. There are many different ways of applying a process. And by default, the people who were trained to be project manager only know one, the typical stage gate with a very nice line where you fill one dot after the other. So that's what I saw as a value by having designer being project manager. They challenge that. They challenge the status quo and they try to kill Taylorism, which is basically killing creativity in companies. We love it because it's safe and that everyone understands a timeline, a linear timeline. It's also not very productive to generate new ideas. But you're right. I mean, we have to be careful for them not to be caught up in the administrative part of it, which is the trap.
But it's really interesting. I'm glad we have this debate because actually for me, it's a new thought I'm working on and you're the first to see the presentation. And that's why I wasn't really spontaneous about that. Sorry, I just wrote it like 3 weeks ago and not in English at the beginning. But yeah, it's really interesting to discuss this with you and have your feedback on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chloé.
Thank you,
Chloé.
Chloé.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.